The city streets were alive with motion, a chaotic symphony of honking cars, chatter and hurried footsteps. Neon signs blinked lazily above store entrances, their bright colors reflecting off wet asphalt from an earlier rain. The late afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the sidewalks as office workers, students, and tourists hurried past, lost in their own worlds. Amid the throng of busy people, a lone figure stood almost unnoticed, a frail old woman, her frame hunched beneath a faded coat that had seen far better days. She clutched a worn-out shopping bag to her chest, the fabric fraying at the edges, a small symbol of the few belongings she carried. Her thin, veined hands trembled slightly. Not entirely from the cold that bit at the city streets, but from the deep unease that had settled over her. The woman's hair, streaked with silver, had escaped from the loose bun she had tied hurriedly in the morning, and a few stray strands fell across her face, masking her tired eyes. She glanced left and right, trying to recognize anything familiar, but the streets seemed strange, unwelcoming, and, in that moment, terrifying. People brushed past her, their eyes fixed ahead or buried in their phones. Some glanced briefly, their expressions flickering with irritation or indifference before they moved on. A businessman with a briefcase jostled her slightly, muttering a quick, "Watch it," before disappearing into the crowd. A young couple walked by, laughing and pointing at something on the man's phone, oblivious to the woman standing frozen near the curb. Even the street vendors, busy calling out deals to attract customers, seemed to treat her as invisible, as if her presence were nothing more than a shadow passing through their day. The old woman took a small, tentative step forward, almost as if she were testing the ground beneath her. Her eyes scanned the street signs, trying to recall the name of the shop she had intended to visit, but the letters blurred together in the bright sunlight and the noise that surrounded her. Every step seemed heavier than the last. Her frailty contrasted sharply against the relentless energy of the city. A shiver ran down her spine, and she hugged herself tighter, wishing for a moment of respite, a friendly face, a hand to guide her. She remembered, vaguely, that she had wanted to buy groceries, maybe some bread and fruit, but the memories slipped through her mind like water through fingers. She looked at the crowded sidewalk, watching the people move with purpose. Some paused to check their watches, tapping impatiently. Others moved in groups, chatting and laughing, their lives entwined in ways she no longer felt a part of. She was, quite literally, alone. And the awareness of that loneliness pressed down on her chest with every passing second. A bus roared by, spraying water from a puddle onto her worn shoes. She flinched, gripping the shopping bag even tighter, but nobody slowed, nobody offered a hand, a word, a gesture of comfort. Even the distant cry of a street musician, usually a comforting sound, felt harsh today, as though the city itself was conspiring to remind her of her isolation. Her breaths came shallow and quick, not just from the exertion of standing, but from the creeping anxiety that she might remain lost here, unnoticed, indefinitely. Her eyes darted toward a nearby bench, hoping perhaps someone might notice her hesitation and offer guidance. But the bench was occupied by a man scrolling through his phone, headphones in, utterly unaware of the fragile figure just a few feet away. The old woman let out a quiet sigh, almost a whisper, that vanished in the noise of the city. She took another tentative step, each movement calculated, careful not to stumble on the uneven sidewalk tiles. Her knees ached, and her back protested, but she forced herself to keep moving, driven by some small hope that help might appear. She tried to speak, to call out to someone, anyone, but her voice felt weak, almost swallowed by the cacophony around her. "Excuse me," she murmured, barely audible. "Can someone help me?" Only the wind seemed to respond, rustling through the plastic shopping bag and carrying her words into the blur of the city. No one paused. No one turned. No one seemed to notice the old woman standing there. A fragile human presence in a world that had suddenly grown too big and too fast. Her hands, now gripping the bag so tightly it dug into her palms, betrayed the depth of her unease. Each pass of a stranger reminded her of her invisibility. A mother pushing a stroller nearly knocked into her. The woman muttered a soft apology, but her gaze never met the old woman's. A delivery man wheeled past, shouting to a colleague. Even the city's noise, the usual background hum, felt louder today, oppressive in its insistence that she did not belong here. For a moment, she closed her eyes, and let herself sway slightly, trying to steady her breathing. She thought of her small apartment, the modest meals she prepared, the neighbors she barely knew, and the days when life had felt simpler, slower, kinder. Those memories, however fleeting, only deepened the ache in her chest. She opened her eyes, scanning the crowd again, desperately hoping for a face, a gesture, a sign that someone would finally stop. And then, just as she was beginning to feel that hope slipping away, a shadow fell across her. She looked up, startled, and saw a young black teenage boy approaching. Unlike the others, he was not hurrying past. His steps were measured, his eyes focused on her with a mix of concern and curiosity. He stopped a few feet away, smiling gently, giving her space but signaling that he was there. The old woman's heart gave a small, almost imperceptible lift. For the first time in hours, maybe days, she felt seen. She looked into the teen's eyes, hesitant but relieved. Could this be someone willing to stop, to notice, to help her? Her trembling hands relaxed slightly, still holding the bag, still unsure, but ready, perhaps finally, to accept that help was coming. And so, amid the chaos, the noise, and the indifference of the city, a small spark of hope flickered to life in the old woman's chest. One act of attention, one pause in the rush of daily life, was about to change everything. The city continued its relentless rhythm, a blur of motion, sound, and color. Cars honked, footsteps echoed on the wet pavement, and the chatter of hurried pedestrians filled the air. Yet amid this chaos, one figure stood out, not because he was loud or dramatic, but because he moved differently. The teenage boy, 17, with dark skin and keen, observant eyes, was walking home from school. His backpack slung casually over one shoulder, he weaved through the crowd with a relaxed, almost absent-minded grace. Most people his age were buried in their phones, earbuds plugged in, talking or texting as they walked. But he noticed things. Small things. Details most overlooked. A cracked sidewalk tile. A dog tugging impatiently at its leash. A mother struggling with a fussy toddler. And today, his eyes caught something that made him slow his pace immediately. A frail old woman, standing at the corner of the street, clutching a worn shopping bag, looking utterly lost. At first, he thought he must be imagining it. The crowd around her seemed oblivious, moving with a practiced indifference. He scanned the faces passing her, some glared in annoyance, some avoided eye contact, and a few barely registered her presence at all. His chest tightened. How could a person in clear need be so completely ignored? He slowed to a stop, adjusting the strap of his backpack, and observed her more closely. The woman's coat hung loosely on her thin frame, fraying at the sleeves and collar. Her hands, gnarled and trembling, clutched the bag so tightly it seemed a part of her own body. She shifted nervously from foot to foot, her eyes scanning the street, desperate yet hopeless. As if trying to remember a place she once knew but now could not find. Her lips moved slightly, forming words too soft for anyone around her to hear. The teen felt a pang in his chest, a mix of concern and a sense of moral urgency. He had seen lost people before, of course, but usually in passing. Maybe a child looking for their parent, or an elderly neighbor wandering aimlessly. But this woman seemed different. She was small, vulnerable, and alone in a sea of indifference. There was something in her posture, the slight quiver of her hands, the way her eyes darted around nervously, that struck a chord deep inside him. He could feel her anxiety almost physically, as if it were a weight pressing on him. The teen took another careful step toward her. Unlike the people rushing past, he was moving deliberately, slowing his pace, ensuring he didn't startle her. His eyes met hers briefly, and he gave a small, reassuring smile. It was a simple gesture, but in the midst of the crowd's apathy, it carried a quiet power. The woman's head tilted slightly, uncertainty written across her lined face. She hadn't expected anyone to notice, much less approach with kindness. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice calm and gentle, loud enough to be heard over the urban din but soft enough to avoid startling her. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The words hung in the air for a moment, and the old woman's eyes widened. She blinked rapidly, almost as if she needed to verify that she had heard correctly. No one had asked if she was okay for a long, long time. Most people simply ignored her, as if she were invisible. But here was a teenager, someone genuinely looking at her, acknowledging her existence. Her lips trembled, and a small, fragile smile appeared. "I am not sure," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I was trying to get to the market, but I think I took a wrong turn. Her words faltered, uncertainty creeping into every syllable. The teen nodded slowly, processing her words. He crouched slightly so he would be more at eye level with her, not towering over her and making her feel even smaller. That's okay, he said reassuringly. Do you remember the name of the market? The woman shook her head gently, frustration and fear mingling in her expression. No, I don't know where I am anymore, she admitted. Her hands clenched the bag tighter, as if holding on to might anchor her in the midst of the chaos. The teen took a deep breath, thinking carefully. It's okay, he repeated. We can figure it out together. Let's find a place to sit for a moment, and you can tell me anything you remember. Then we'll figure out the next step. Her eyes scanned him suspiciously at first. Who was this young man? Why was he stopping to help her when everyone else had walked past? But something in his calm demeanor, the sincerity in his gaze, and the absence of judgment or impatience made her relax slightly. She allowed herself to be guided a few steps toward a nearby bench, her movements tentative but increasingly trusting. As they walked, the teen kept his tone gentle, speaking softly. It's okay to feel lost, he said. It happens to everyone at some point. You're not alone right now, I promise. The old woman nodded slowly, the words comforting her more than she expected. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been, how desperate for recognition and human kindness. The city had made her feel invisible, and yet here was a young stranger extending a hand, offering attention, concern, and patience. Once they reached the bench, she sank onto it with a sigh, grateful for the rest. Her eyes studied him, curiosity now mixed with a cautious gratitude. You didn't have to stop, she said. The teen shook his head, smiling gently. I did, he replied simply. I couldn't just walk past, everyone deserves a little help sometimes. For a moment they sat in silence, the city bustling around them, but now it felt slightly less overwhelming. In that pause, a fragile bond began to form, one based on empathy, trust, and the quiet recognition that a small act of noticing could make all the difference. The teen glanced down at her bag. Do you want me to help you carry that? He asked. The offer was simple, almost mundane, but to the old woman it felt monumental. She nodded, relief flooding her features, and the teen gently lifted the bag. Careful not to jostle it. They sat together, a moment of calm amid the storm of the city, and the teen realized something profound. Helping someone wasn't about recognition, reward, or even thanks. It was about being present, noticing the humanity in someone else when everyone else was too busy to care. And for the old woman, this small act of compassion was a lifeline. A reminder that she wasn't invisible, that someone still saw her, that someone still cared. And in that crowded street, amidst the chaos and indifference, a young boy and a lost old woman shared a rare, fleeting moment of connection. One that would ripple far beyond this single afternoon, changing both of their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. After guiding the old woman to a small bench near a quiet side street, the teen gently set down her fraying shopping bag beside her. The street, while still busy, felt slightly less chaotic here. A quieter pocket in the midst of the city's constant hum. Pedestrians continued their hurried march around them, but for a brief moment, it was as if time had slowed, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of calm and human connection. The old woman sat hunched over, her hands resting on the worn bag, fingers interlaced as though trying to draw strength from the object. Her eyes, dark and tired, scanned the passing crowd with a flicker of anxiety. The teen, noticing her unease, knelt slightly in front of her, not too close, just enough to be at eye level, so she wouldn't feel intimidated. Are you comfortable here? He asked gently, keeping his tone soft and friendly. She nodded hesitantly. I think so, she murmured. Her voice quivered not just from age but from a lingering fear. I'm not used to being lost in a place like this. The teen smiled reassuringly. It's okay, he said. You're not alone now. We'll figure this out together. First, let's make sure you're alright. Can I get you some water? Her eyes widened slightly. Water? She asked, almost surprised by the kindness. Most people simply brushed past, pretending she didn't exist. She hadn't expected anyone to offer help, let alone a gesture so simple yet considerate. Yes, he replied. There's a cafe right over there, he said, nodding toward a small storefront across the street. "We can sit inside. You can rest, have a drink, and we can talk about what happened. Will that be okay?" The old woman hesitated for a moment, uncertainty flickering in her gaze. But then, slowly, she nodded. "All right," she said. She rose carefully, leaning slightly on her cane. And the teen stepped closer to support her without making her feel patronized. Together, they crossed the street, moving slowly but steadily, the teen keeping a careful eye on her every step. Once inside the cafe, they found a small table tucked into the corner, away from the main flow of customers. The air smelled of warm pastries and fresh coffee, a comforting contrast to the harsh noise of the streets outside. The teen pulled out the chair for her, and she sat down with a soft sigh, grateful for the moment of respite. I'm so tired," she admitted, her hands still trembling slightly as she clutched the shopping bag. "I walked so far, and I didn't know where I was going. And everyone just passed me by." Her voice cracked, and she looked down, ashamed and embarrassed by the vulnerability she felt. The teen's expression softened. "I understand," he said gently. "Sometimes people are too busy with their own lives to notice others. But that doesn't mean your struggle isn't real, or that your feelings aren't important. You matter." For a moment, she looked up, her eyes meeting his, searching for any hint of insincerity. But all she found was genuine care. A warmth bloomed in her chest. A fragile sense of hope that someone truly saw her, someone who didn't turn away. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't expect anyone to stop. I thought I would just be invisible." "You're not invisible," the teen said firmly. "Not to me. Not today." The waitress approached, a friendly young woman with a clipboard. The teen ordered water and a small plate of fruit for the woman, making sure it was something light and easy for her to eat. As the waitress left, he turned his attention back to her. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked. "How did you get here?" The old woman hesitated, then began slowly recounting her story. She had gone to the market that morning with a list of groceries, but somewhere along the way, the familiar streets had shifted, turning into a maze of signs and buildings she didn't recognize. Each turn seemed wrong, each block unfamiliar. Fear had built up inside her, and soon, she found herself disoriented and unable to remember the way home. The teen listened attentively, nodding, asking gentle questions to clarify details. "Did you walk far?" he asked. "Yes," she admitted. "I tried to retrace my steps, but it all looked the same. And then I think I started panicking a little." Her voice trembled again, and she looked down at the table, ashamed of her own vulnerability. "Don't be ashamed," he said softly. "Anyone could get lost, especially in a city this big. You did the right thing by stopping and waiting, and now we'll figure it out together." She smiled faintly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "You're very kind," she said. Most people just hurry past. I've been ignored so many times that I almost forgot what it felt like to be noticed." The teen shrugged modestly. "It's nothing special. I just noticed you. That's all." For a moment, silence fell between them, comfortable rather than awkward. The water arrived, and the old woman sipped slowly, her hands now steadier. The fruit was next, and she ate with quiet gratitude. The simple act of nourishment providing both physical and emotional relief. The teen watched her carefully, ensuring she was comfortable, feeling a sense of quiet pride, that his small actions were making a real difference. As she ate, the teen asked gently about her home, hoping to glean any landmarks or familiar points that could help him guide her back. She mentioned a small apartment building near a park, the little bakery where she often bought bread, and a street with a distinctive red door. Each detail, though scattered and incomplete, painted a picture of a life lived quietly, independently, yet now vulnerable in the overwhelming city. "You're very brave," the teen said, encouragingly. "It's not easy to be out here alone, and you handled it as best you could. And now you're safe. That's what matters." The old woman's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, touched not just by the practical help, but by the respect and kindness in his words. "You have a good heart," she said softly. I can't thank you enough. I don't even know your name." "Jordan," he said with a warm smile. "And I'm happy to help." For the first time since she had wandered the streets, A sense of relief and gratitude washed over the old woman. She felt seen, heard, and respected. And Jordan, standing there quietly beside her, realized that helping her was about more than just guiding her or giving her water. It was about restoring her dignity, reminding her that she still mattered, even in a world that had largely ignored her. Minutes passed, and the bustling cafe continued around them, but their little corner remained a sanctuary. They talked more. Jordan asking carefully about her day, her life and her needs, and the woman slowly opening up. Her words flowing more freely as she relaxed in his presence. Each answer, each smile, each gesture built a bridge between two lives that might otherwise have passed by each other unnoticed. By the time they finished the water and fruit, Jordan had a plan. He would help her retrace her steps back to her apartment safely, and if necessary, he would guide her to a nearby landmark, or even call someone she trusted. But more importantly, in those moments together, they had formed a human connection that neither the city's noise nor its indifference could erase. A reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could make the world feel a little warmer, a little safer, and infinitely more hopeful. And in that quiet cafe corner, amidst the scent of pastries and the gentle hum of conversation, a fragile friendship began to bloom. One that would soon set in motion a series of events neither of them could have imagined, all sparked by a simple act of noticing, a willingness to care, and the courage to stop when everyone else had walked past. Once Jordan had helped the old woman finish her small snack and water, he gently suggested they continue toward her apartment, knowing the streets outside were still bustling and chaotic. The old woman hesitated for a moment, glancing at the crowd passing them by, a flicker of fear crossing her lined face. "Are you sure it's safe?" she asked quietly. Jordan smiled reassuringly. "I've got you. We'll take it slow, and I'll make sure you get home safely." Her hands shook slightly as she took his arm for support. And together, they stepped back into the streets. Jordan moved carefully, matching her pace, scanning the sidewalks and crosswalks for hazards. They passed towering buildings, street vendors, and clusters of people moving hurriedly in all directions. The city's pulse was relentless, but Jordan's presence was a steady anchor, a sense of calm in the whirlwind around her. After several blocks, they reached a narrow street lined with older apartment buildings. One of them stood out, a modest, brick building with ivy climbing up its walls and a red door at the entrance. The old woman paused, her eyes widening slightly, and she whispered, This is it." The Jordan helped her up the small step to the entrance. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, the familiar smell of home, a mix of old wood, cooking spices, and faint floral perfume, greeting her. The warmth of the apartment contrasted sharply with the chilly city streets outside. She sighed, a mixture of relief and exhaustion, as she set down her shopping bag. "Would you like to come in for a minute?" she asked. Her eyes studied Jordan carefully, a combination of curiosity and gratitude shining in them. "Just for a little while, to rest." Jordan hesitated, feeling slightly shy but sensing the trust she was offering. "Of course," he said softly. Once inside, the apartment revealed a life full of memories. Photographs adorned the walls, showing a younger version of the woman surrounded by friends, family, and community gatherings. Shelves were lined with books, small trinkets, and framed awards, tokens of a life she had lived actively, though now quiet and solitary. The apartment was modest, cozy, and surprisingly warm, reflecting a life of resilience and quiet dignity. The old woman led him to a small living area with a comfortable chair by the window. She gestured for him to sit, and he did, trying not to feel out of place. She herself sank into her chair, settling in with a contented sigh. "Jordan," she said after a moment, "you have a very good heart. I don't know many people who would stop in a city like this. Most people are too busy to notice someone like me." He shrugged modestly. "I just saw that you needed help. That's all." She smiled warmly, then paused, as if considering something. "You know," she began, "life has a way of rewarding kindness. Sometimes not immediately, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect. I want to show you something." The Jordan's curiosity piqued. He leaned forward as she walked over to a small drawer, and pulled out a neatly folded envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it to him. "I keep this for occasions like today," she said softly. "Open it when you're ready." Jordan took the envelope carefully, sensing its importance. He looked at her, unsure whether to open it immediately. But she nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, he opened it and found a letter inside, written in neat, elegant handwriting. As he read, his eyes widened in astonishment. The letter revealed that the old woman had once been a respected community organizer and philanthropist. She had connections with several local foundations that supported talented, driven young people in the community. She had been looking for someone to mentor and guide, someone with integrity, compassion, and a willingness to step up for others. Qualities she saw in Jordan the moment he stopped to help her. The letter included instructions on how to apply for a scholarship and mentorship program that could provide him not only with financial support for school, but also guidance, opportunities, and access to networks that could change the course of his life. Jordan's heart raced. He had never expected anything like this. His simple act of kindness, helping a lost woman, had opened a door he had never even dreamed existed. He looked up at her, words failing him for a moment. I don't know what to say," he stammered, still processing the weight of what he held. "You don't need to say anything," she replied, smiling warmly. "Just promise me you'll use it well. Be kind, be brave, and continue to notice the world around you. This is a gift, but it's also a responsibility. You have the heart to make a difference, Jordan, and I believe this can help you do just that." Jordan nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude, disbelief, and determination. "I promise," he said firmly. The old woman's eyes glistened with tears, a rare show of emotion that softened her already gentle features. "I can see it in you," she said. "You're going to do great things. And remember, kindness always comes back to you, often in ways you never imagine." They spent the next few minutes talking more. Not just about the scholarship or mentorship, but about life, values, and the importance of noticing the people around you. The old woman shared stories of her past work in the community, the struggles she had faced, and the small victories that had made a lasting impact. Jordan listened intently, absorbing her wisdom, and understanding the deeper lesson she was imparting. Not just about opportunity, but about the power of compassion and presence. By the time Jordan stood to leave, the sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting warm golden light through the apartment windows. The streets outside had taken on a quieter, almost magical quality. He helped the old woman to the door, ensuring she was settled and safe once again. "Thank you, Jordan," she said softly, pressing a gentle hand to his shoulder. "Remember today, remember that small actions matter. You stopped when others walked past, and look at what came of it. The world needs more people like you." Jordan smiled, feeling a new sense of purpose swelling in his chest. "I'll remember," he said. "And I'll do my best." As he stepped back onto the street, the envelope still safely in his backpack, he realized something profound. A single act of noticing someone in need, something so simple, almost instinctual, had set into motion a chain of events that could change not only his life but, potentially, the lives of countless others he might touch in the future. The city around him continued its bustling rhythm, but Jordan now moved with a new awareness. He understood that every person, every interaction, every moment of attention and care mattered. And that day when everyone else had walked past, he had chosen differently, and in doing so, had discovered the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness. The following morning, the city awoke as it always did, a mix of hurried footsteps, blaring horns, and the low hum of life continuing its relentless pace. But for Jordan, the day felt profoundly different. The encounter with the old woman, and the unexpected gift she had entrusted to him had shifted something deep within him. He moved through the streets with a sense of purpose, and calm awareness. Noticing details he might once have ignored. The tired street sweepers, the children struggling to carry backpacks too heavy for their small frames, the elderly man carefully crossing the street. Each person was no longer part of the background, each was someone to be acknowledged. At school, Jordan walked into the building with his backpack slung over one shoulder, the envelope from the old woman still carefully tucked inside. He felt a quiet pride mingled with a deep sense of responsibility. This scholarship and mentorship opportunity was more than just a chance to improve his future. It was a tangible reminder that kindness mattered, that small actions could have far-reaching consequences. During lunch, he sat with his usual friends, though today his energy and demeanor were noticeably different. He recounted the previous day's events with measured enthusiasm. Careful not to boast but eager to share the lesson he had learned. "You know," he said, "sometimes all it takes is noticing someone. Just stopping for a moment. That's how I met someone yesterday, a woman lost in the city, and it changed everything for me." His friends leaned in, intrigued. They asked questions. How he found her, what happened, and what kind of scholarship he was talking about. Jordan explained without exaggeration, focusing on the simple truth that one small act of compassion had connected him to someone who recognized his potential, opening doors he hadn't even dreamed existed. By the end of lunch, his story had sparked curiosity among others. A few classmates mentioned times they had seen people in need but hadn't acted. And Jordan's account inspired a new awareness. His words weren't just about opportunity. They were about empathy, the importance of noticing others, and the ripple effect even small acts of kindness could create. After school, Jordan made his way back to the neighborhood near the old woman's apartment. Though he had no expectation of seeing her again, he wanted to make sure she was all right. As he approached her building, he saw her standing at the window, gazing out at the street below. She waved gently, a warm reassuring gesture that made his chest swell with a sense of fulfillment. He waved back, feeling a connection that transcended words. A shared understanding that their brief encounter had left a lasting impact on both of them. Jordan paused on the sidewalk for a moment, reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the countless people who had walked past the old woman, indifferent to her presence. He realized that their inattention had been an opportunity lost, a small tragedy repeated countless times across the city. But he also understood that he had made a choice. A conscious decision to act with empathy rather than indifference. And that choice had set into motion a chain of positive events. He remembered the letter the woman had given him, the opportunity it represented, and the lessons embedded in her words, that kindness, compassion, and awareness of others could open doors in ways one might never anticipate. Jordan felt a deep sense of purpose welling up inside him. He knew he wanted to use this opportunity wisely, not just for his own benefit, but to make a tangible difference in the world around him. As he walked through the neighborhood, he noticed small things he might have overlooked before. A young girl struggling to carry groceries, a man hunched over with exhaustion, a stray dog searching for scraps of food. He stopped to help the girl, carrying her groceries part of the way home. He offered a gentle word to the man, making him smile despite his fatigue. He even managed to coax the dog away from a busy street and toward a safe alley. Each small gesture, seemingly insignificant on its own, filled him with a quiet sense of fulfillment, reinforcing the lesson he had learned. That even minor acts of kindness could ripple outward, affecting lives in ways one might never see. That evening, Jordan returned home and carefully placed the envelope in a drawer, already making plans to follow the steps outlined in the letter. He knew he would need to apply for the scholarship, prepare for interviews, and commit to the mentorship program. But more than that, he knew he carried with him a lesson far more important than any formal opportunity, the power of noticing, of caring, of taking action when others might ignore someone in need. Over the next few weeks, Jordan began to see changes in himself and in his surroundings. At school, he became more aware of the struggles of his classmates, offering help when he could, listening when others needed to talk, and encouraging his peers to do the same. Teachers noticed a new sense of leadership and empathy in his actions, praising his initiative and compassion. His friends, inspired by his story, began to take notice of the people around them, small acts of kindness multiplying throughout their circles. Meanwhile, the old woman continued her daily life with a renewed sense of hope and connection. She shared her story with a few trusted neighbors, quietly celebrating the unexpected bond she had formed with a young boy, who reminded her of the goodness that still existed in the world. She watched from her window as Jordan helped others, moving through the streets with the same careful attention he had shown her. And a smile played on her lips. She knew that in that single moment of choosing to stop and help, she had ignited a spark that would illuminate many lives beyond her own. Months later, Jordan received formal confirmation that he had been accepted into the scholarship and mentorship program. The opportunity gave him access to resources, guidance, and networks that would help him achieve his dreams. But more importantly, it strengthened his resolve to live by the principles he had learned: to notice, to care, and to act with kindness. He knew that success was not measured solely by awards or recognition, but by the positive impact one had on others, the lives touched, and the hope inspired. As he walked home one evening, the city alive with the familiar sounds of movement and conversation, Jordan paused to look around. He saw people hurrying past one another, faces fixed on their own concerns. But he also noticed subtle signs of kindness: a man helping an elderly neighbor with groceries, a teenager giving directions to a lost visitor, a street musician sharing a smile with a passerby. The city, he realized, was full of small moments like these, waiting to be noticed, waiting for someone to choose to act. Jordan smiled, feeling the weight and the promise of what he had learned. He knew that the ripple effect of that single choice, the decision to stop for the old woman, was far from over. Every person he helped, every act of kindness he offered, would continue the chain, spreading warmth, hope, and humanity in ways he might never fully see. And so, in the midst of a bustling city where most people walked past without noticing, one young boy's simple act of compassion had sparked a transformation. Not just in his own life, but in the lives of those around him. It was a quiet, powerful reminder that even the smallest gestures, made with genuine care, could change the world, one life at a time. As the sun set over the city skyline, casting golden light on the streets below, Jordan looked up at the sky and felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had learned that kindness was not just an action, but a force, one capable of creating opportunities, building connections, and inspiring others to do the same. And in that moment, he knew that the choice to stop, to notice, and to help was a choice he would carry with him for the rest of his life.